Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. This chapter, it's about silence. Not the kind you get in the middle of the night, but the kind that comes right after you tell the truth, and everybody act like they didn't hear you. They don't come for you with bullets no more. They come with zoning meetings, property tax letters, phone calls from concerned foundations. You think that's pressure. Let me show you how they put the crown on fire, y'all. See, after the Citywide, the real plan expose dropped. The whole block, they expected a war. Cameras, marches, news vans, protests, all of this. But what came was nothing. No press conferences, no city outrage, no arrest, nothing, not at all, nothing, just nothing, silence. But see, Joe knew better. Feels like the calm before the storm, what Trey was thinking. And Joe nodded, nah, this is the ugly. They ain't fighting us in the open no more. They ain't gonna bleed us quiet. They gonna bleed us quiet. Make us shut it down. Everybody gonna back up and run and get out the way, even those that might have benefited. And it all started with a call from the Department of Buildings. Black Crown's flagship property, the old rec center, was suddenly flagged for multiple violations. Faulty plumbing, outdated wiring, improper zoning for public programs, all of these things that, if they were true, were out in the open before. We've had this open for 2 years. Keely snapped, slamming down the violation packet. Why now? Joe didn't respond. He just circled one line in red. Cease and desist until further inspection. They were locking them out their own building. That was the move. Everything when you're dealing with the legal world revolves around the laws that are in place to allow you to function and operate and prosper. Those same laws and things that go along with that, they accompany those permits that'll give you permission to do something. They also give them the power to shut you down. See, this is why a lot of people stay in the streets. They don't have to worry about that. But it's still worth the fight. See, 2 days later, Joe received a legal summons. It wasn't criminal, it was civil. It was a lawsuit from a private citizen claiming defamation, and economic sabotage due to the public release of Citywide, the real plan. And the plaintiff, guess who it was, y'all? Take a wild guess. It was Marcus Gentry. Claimed that Joe's documents were stolen, fabricated, and led to irreparable professional damage. He was asking for $10 million in damages. Joe dropped the envelope on the desk and stared at it like it was a ticking time bomb. They're gonna try to bankrupt me before they break me. Take it all. Miss Renee whispered, "You prepared?" Joe nodded. "Yeah. I'm just tired of playing clean." See, this is what'll happen to you. See, the clean fight is dirtier than the dirty one. It'll make you be like, man, I'm not trying to hear going up in the courtroom and let somebody go up in there and lie and lay their case out, and then my lawyer got to go back and refute that, and you going back and forth. The whole time money is being spent, bills being run up. And that's the game until you tap out. But see, Joe, Joe reached out to a retired civil rights attorney who once sued the city for redlining. And see, let me explain to y'all redlining. See, redlining back in the day was when certain banks and lending institutions, they would circle certain parts of a city, mostly dominated by poor blacks and whites, you understand? And Hispanics and Asians, depending on anything that wasn't white. And say, we're not giving loans in this area, right? And that allowed for those areas to go down in property value and other areas to go up in property value. It was an economic holding back of those individuals that lived in those areas. This went on And see, this lawyer, this dude named Isaac Clay, listen to me, he had a reputation. He was fierce. He didn't play. And his fee, let me tell you now, you would imagine somebody like this, expensive. But whatever you can afford is what he charged, plus a box of Black & Milds. Oh yeah, he liked his cigars. And they met in a quiet bookstore downtown. Isaac listened, puffed slowly, then he said this: "You want to win this? Don't fight it like a gangster. Fight it like an insider. They used the system against you. Now you use the system against them." Joe said back, "We gonna sue?" Isaac looked at him and grinned because he knew, you know what I'm saying, Joe didn't really understand the fullness of what he was saying. He said, "Nah, we gonna bury him in paperwork." Listen to me. The game gets deeper. I know some of y'all saying, what in the world is Joe talking about? See, now Isaac, he said now he filing all these countersuits, injunctions, you know what I'm saying? And Keely, she launched Operation Paper Crown. It was like a full-blown media assault. Influencers wearing black-owned by none hoodies, documentaries shot by, on iPhones, expose articles ghostwritten for, major platforms, all this stuff. And Joe hitting the local radio stations, podcasts, high schools, told the story again and again, over and over, not as a victim, but as a blueprint. And every time they tried to silence him, the people got louder and louder. The city council stopped talking about this and that. They stopped taking questions in public. They didn't want to talk about it. The developers stopped showing up to ribbon cuttings and Gentry. Look here, he vanished. But Joe knew better. Joe knew better. Quiet don't mean dead. Quiet just mean underground. That's all it means. See, the public's attention span is short, like a mosquito's tweeter. So people in these positions, they assume that most of the time, which is true, people's attention is going to find itself elsewhere. And then they can rear their head again and continue the same old nonsense. Just buy time, they say. Just move it along, they say. Just keep people's attention on something else and you can do whatever you want. But this, not today. Not today. Not today. Now time is going on, and then one night, Bishop came to Joe with a little news. He said, "I got a contract, deep money, old Memphis money. She want to talk. Say she believes in what you're building." Now listen to me now. It's rare. Joe raised his eyebrows. He's looking at. He said, "Come on, man. What's the catch?" Bishop looked at him. Said, "Look here, man. She been quiet for years. Part of the old guard, but she lost her grandson to the street. Said if you come correct, she'll help bankroll the next phase. She just want to know." Joe didn't trust her, not one bit, but he showed up. They met in this gated mansion in Central Gardens. White gloves on the butlers and all this old type of stuff. Portraits on the wall are older than Joe. Just, people standing there, all regal looking and all this and that. The whole block. The whole block. Her name was Celeste Ashby. 92 years old. Sharp eyes. Sharper memory, She said, "I've seen a lot of boys like you come and go. What makes you different?" Joe looked her in the eyes and, he was kind of, thrown off at this conversation, but she was looking at him and Joe looked at her. He said, "I don't want your approval. I want the city my people bled for." She picked up her little teacup, sipped at her tea, and then she said, "Well, good. Because I don't offer approval. I offer leverage. I'm not concerned with those types of things. I've seen this city at its best, and I've seen this city at its worst. And you, young man, you seem to want to see this city be great for everybody. Not just you, not just me, but for all of us." And she said, "I can respect that. I get that. I want that as well." So Celeste, she gave Joe $150,000 under one condition. One condition, y'all. Yeah. No public affiliation. Nobody could know. Because she said, if they know I'm backing you, the snakes would change their skin. See, this is one thing that we got to understand. See, when you doing what you're doing above board in the public eye, you learn to keep your mouth shut. You don't tell everybody who your allies are and all of these different types of things. You keep all that quiet, because once they know, then they switch up how they move, because they understand the moves of the game. When you play chess on a board against your opponent, it's out in the open. The onlookers can see your moves, and you can see the opponent's move and all this and that, right? But here's the thing. When you play chess in real life, right, you don't want your opponent knowing what your next move is until it's too late. Now, Joe accepted. He accepted the deal. And he used it to pay, legal retainers, renovate the rec center under a Shell LLC. And he launched a youth-run legal clinic staffed by first-year law students. And he bought airtime on local stations to teach kids about, contracts and credit and criminal law, stuff like that. Black crime wasn't just surviving. It was adapting, becoming something dangerous, something lethal, something that everybody could be proud of in the right way, in the right mode. But just when things began to balance out, Joe found something on his desk one morning. It was a white envelope. And inside that envelope, it was a USB typewritten note. And it said, "Don't trust the mirror, it watches back." A single printed photo. It was Keely meeting with two men in suits. Oh yeah. It was date stamped from 2 weeks ago. Joe sat there for about 20, 30 minutes just looking at it. His heart split between loyalty and paranoia, not knowing what to do. Surely not Keely. Surely not her. He had come to trust her unwaveringly. He knew she was down for him. So that night, Joe waited until everybody cleared out of the building. And Keely, she was doing her thing, finishing up some editing on the different press releases and all this and that. So Joe walked in, closed the door behind him. "You got something to tell me?" She looked up tired and cautious, you understand, looking at him like, "What?" And then he dropped the photo right in her lap. Flat out dead silence. Didn't say nothing. And then she said, "I knew this would come up. They offered me a deal, Joe. Said they could clean my debt, make me whole. But I told them no." Joe looking at him with that look in his eye. "Why didn't you tell me?" Keely's voice cracked. "Because I didn't want you to look at me like that. The way you looking at me now." Joe didn't respond. He picked up the envelope, the picture, and he tore it up. Then he said, "You tell me next time, or there won't be a next time." Now see, let me explain something to you about that. See, a lot of times when we get ourselves in a situation like that, and knowing the right thing to do for Keely was to come and tell Joe immediately after she had been confronted and offered that deal. See, our minds revert back to the old way of thinking. They're not going to believe me. He's not going to trust me no more. How did they know that my debt was this? And where did they find me? And how? All these kind of questions will cause you to isolate yourself from the people that you say you trust and that trust you. Instead of going to them, you pull away from them and you hope that it never comes out. But guess what? When you do that, what you do is you give the other side leverage to use against you, to try to put a wedge between you and the person that you say you trust and that says they trust you. It's about transparency. When you align yourself with somebody, put it all on the table. If they with you, they with you. If they're against you, they're against you. And at least you'll find out from the get-it. Put it all on the table. This is one of the major hurdles that prevents us from uniting. Not to hurt anybody, but to love one another. See, We got to get there. And if we don't get there, people are going to continue to use these things against us to keep us separated, to keep us looking at each other, paranoid, can't trust each other, while they sit around and eat lobster and steak. And we still over here eating bologna and cheese. Well, I like bologna and cheese, especially if I got some Ruffles to go with it or something like that. And a nice old cold soda pop, Sunkist or Pepsi or something like that. Some mustard on that thing. Especially if you fry it. You know when you fry that bologna, you cut it on the corner, then raise up in the middle, then you set that cheese on there for about 10 seconds, and it just stick to that bologna, and you sip that thing up out there and put it on that bread. Eating it right then, and while you eating it, it's so hot in your mouth, you're moving it around in your mouth, trying to get it. It tastes so good. You know, I get distracted when I get to talk about that food, y'all. But anyway, let me get back to it, right? Joe knew the game had changed. Trust, it wasn't a luxury anymore. It was a risk. And now he was playing chess blindfolded. Blindfolded, not knowing what's going on. So he made one more move, one final move. He filed a request with the city to incorporate Black Crown as a sovereign educational entity protected under the nonprofit federal statutes with the immunity, listen to me, with the immunity from local commercial zoning influence. If it passed, he owned the one thing no one could touch, the people's right to build without permission. He needed that. He wanted that. He fought for it. He fought for it. Because he understood something, y'all, that we all got to come to understand. This ain't about one gang or one man anymore. It's about legacy. About quiet wars fought on paper with white gloves and blackmail. But hey, he was done asking. That's our downfall, y'all. We keep asking permission with our actions because we don't know the rules of the game. When you don't know the rules of the game, you got to keep asking. And sometimes you'll be asking people that it's in their best interest not to tell you the truth. Now he's building something that they can't erase. They can't get rid of. Can't do, can't put him on the bench. Can't push him to the side. The only way a coach can put you on the bench when you're in the middle of a game is if you're not doing what he wants you to do. That's when they usually set you down. But see, instead of relying on the coach to give you playing time, why don't you build your own team? Why don't you build your own league and know the rules, write the rules so that you can continue to play? Are we clear? Do I need to be any more clear? You understand what I'm saying? So check this out, y'all. Check this out. Because everything's going to keep moving on. It's going to keep moving on. But look here. If you want to know how that plays out, if you want to know how this thing keeps moving, because it's chugging right along, you want to know how this thing keep moving, you have to tune in to the next episode, right? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.